On a dark and stormy night, a man pulls up to a desolate cemetery. Moving like a shadow, he quickly breaks into the electrical box to cut the power to the security cameras. Once the coast is clear, he finds a specific grave and begins driving an iron stake deep into the earth. An inner voice screams a warning in his head that what he's doing is no different than killing someone who is already dead all over again. This dark ritual could be his ticket to the very top, granting him the fame and power he's always craved. But there's a catch. He has to sacrifice the person he treasures most, his wife, Sanga. After a few seconds of intense inner turmoil, he grits his teeth and brings the hammer down with cold determination. This man is Tae-seob, the son of a humble factory worker. Years ago, his father was a union leader fighting for workers' rights, but he was framed and thrown in jail by a corrupt prosecutor who took bribes from the company. That very night, unable to handle the injustice, his father took his own life. Fueled by a burning desire for revenge, Tae-seob vowed to become a prosecutor himself. The problem? This field is an elite playground reserved for those with noble bloodlines. To rub shoulders with the rich and powerful, Tae-seob spent every penny of his rent money just to buy a luxury car to look the part. He even went as far as hanging off a 9th-floor hotel railing for 5 grueling hours in -8 degrees Celsius weather just to get noticed by the chief prosecutor. Despite everyone mocking him, saying he's chasing a pipe dream and will eventually be discarded by the elite, Tae-seob remains obsessed with one goal: reaching the highest peak so that everyone will finally have to look up at him. His big break finally arrives when he meets the superstar actress, Sanga. When she comes in to give a witness statement, Tae-seob realizes instantly that she is his golden key into the world of high society. Before long, they have the wedding of the century. The media goes into a frenzy, calling it a real-life fairy tale between a poor prosecutor and Asia's biggest star. But the dream quickly turns into a nightmare when Sanga gets hit with a massive tax evasion scandal involving millions of dollars. Overnight, she goes from the nation's sweetheart to a total pariah. Her career hits rock bottom, forcing her to swallow her pride and sing at weddings just to make ends meet. To make matters worse, people start cruelly mocking her, saying she's losing her looks. While his wife is struggling to survive, Tae-seob is busy social climbing at a lavish birthday party for a man named Kwok. Showing zero shame, he confidently introduces himself as a star prosecutor and even puts on a show, using his legendary beer-pouring skills to flatter a powerful congresswoman. He's clearly a man who will throw away his dignity for a promotion. However, Tae-seob gets a reality check from his colleagues. They advise him to quit the prosecution and run for office in the upcoming elections instead, telling him he's wasting his life at the DA's office. Right now, Mayor Hae-hoon is leading the presidential polls, but everyone in the legal world knows she's corrupt and has taken massive bribes from conglomerates to push through land deals. But because she's related to the prosecutor general, she's considered a poison chalice. Anyone foolish enough to investigate her will see their career go up in flames. Yet, with a streak of madness in his blood, Tae-seob decides he wants a taste of that poison. When he returns home, he finds his wife Sanga dressed to the nines and putting on makeup, claiming she's going to a film company to discuss a script. Tae-seob is immediately suspicious. Who has a meeting in the middle of the night? But she doesn't bother to give him a single word of explanation. Tae-seob begins digging into a woman named Hae-hoon. She used to be buried under a mountain of scandals that ruined her image, but ever since she partnered with the W Group, she suddenly skyrocketed into a top presidential candidate. It turns out the real puppet master behind W is a woman named Young-mi, who has a very unique and disturbing way of doing business. She specializes in finding celebrities with dark secrets and using them as pawns in sex-for-favors deals with powerful. As it turns out, Young-mi has staged a hostile takeover of Sanga's talent agency, and she's using that leverage to make a truly twisted proposal. The deal is simple but sickening. Sanga must act as a broker and deliver the rising young heartthrob, Yoon-sung, to Mayor Hae-hoon for sexual favors. In exchange, Young-mi promises to skyrocket Sanga back to the top of the A-list. It turns out the mayor has a major obsession with the young actor, and Young-mi is more than happy to play matchmaker to get what she wants. Horrified to her core, Sanga tries to shield her junior, begging Young-mi not to drag the innocent Yoon-sung into this filth. But the Iron Lady isn't playing games. She delivers a cold ultimatum. Cooperate, or she will grind Sanga's career and her entire agency into dust in a heartbeat. Returning home with a stomach full of nausea and dread, Sanga opens up to her husband about her deepest fear, the fear of her star finally fading into nothingness. Instead of offering a typical shoulder to cry on, Tae-seob comforts her in his own twisted way. He tells her he actually admires her because she fears stopping more than anything else in the world. In a moment of raw honesty, Sanga confesses that she loves Tae-seob for his own bottomless, sky-high ambition. It seems this mutual hunger for power is the dark glue holding their marriage together. Meanwhile, Tae-seob isn't just sitting around. He's hired a private investigator named Jongwon to shadow every single move the mayor makes. With evidence of the mayor's secret rendezvous finally in his hands, Tae-seob prepares to strike. He plans to catch her red-handed in a bribery or sex scandal at a high-end hotel, a move that would take down both the mayor and the puppet master, Young-mi. To secure some heavyweight backup, Tae-seob reaches out to Jong Uk, one of the twin princes of a massive conglomerate. The entire business empire was supposed to belong to Jong Uk, but ever since his stepmother, Young-mi, gave the chairman a daughter, she successfully seized control of the group's hotel and entertainment divisions. This has ignited a cold war between the heir and his stepmother, and currently, the prince is losing ground. Tae-seob pitches a win-win deal. He'll help Jong Uk eliminate his stepmother and reclaim the empire, but in return, Jong Uk must use his massive influence to guarantee Tae-seob a seat in Congress. Tae-seob makes it crystal clear. He doesn't just want a seat. He wants to stand at the absolute peak of the entire country. Back at the agency, Sang-ah is a nervous wreck because she knows the predatory Madam Lee has set her sights on Yoon Song. Even though her own career is in the gutter, Sang-ah hasn't lost her soul yet. She strictly orders the agency director to never, under any circumstances, let the boy get dragged into these casting couch horror stories. But loyalty is a rare commodity in this business. The director stabs her in the back, secretly delivering Yoon Song to a hotel to serve as a VIP companion for the madam. When Sang-ah finds out, the director tries to justify it, claiming the company is drowning in debt and that Young-mi threatened to pull all their funding. The most heartbreaking part? Even Yoon Song himself has agreed to go through with it, blinded by the desperate hope of landing a lead role in a prime-time drama. Pushed to the brink of madness, Sang-ah races to the hotel to save him. Little does she know, Young-mi is already there, personally hosting the mayor, completely unaware that they have walked right into Tae-seob's crosshairs. Tae-seob's team is operating with surgical precision. They move fast, lifting the hotel manager's fingerprints and swiping a master keycard for the 17th floor penthouse. Tae-seob quickly gears up, taking the key and an earpiece for the operation. But then, the unexpected happens. His investigator, Jong-won, spots Sang-ah arriving at the hotel's back entrance, looking like she's on the verge of a breakdown. Tae-seob is visibly shaken to hear that his wife is checking into this den of sin. Inside, a trembling Sang-ah walks down the 17th floor hallway, a place that triggers horrific memories she's tried for years to bury. Seeing the young Yoon Song standing at the threshold of a life-altering mistake is like looking into a mirror of her own past. Her throat tightens as if someone is choking her, and she tries to scream at him with her eyes to turn back. But the boy is already blinded by the lights of fame. He chooses to sell his soul for a chance at success, leaving Sang-ah paralyzed in her own helplessness. Then, in the ultimate twist of fate, Sang-ah heads for the elevator only to come face-to-face with Tae-seob. He recognizes his wife instantly, but in a cold, calculated move, he decides to ignore her existence entirely to focus on finishing the job. Even when Sang-ah desperately tries to call him, Tae-seob doesn't even bother to pick up. He's already inside, silently infiltrating the mayor's luxurious suite with his phone, ready to record every piece of incriminating evidence. Sure enough, he catches Mayor Hae-hoon red-handed in the bedroom with the young star in the making, Yoon Song. Tae-seob casually strolls into the room with his signature, cold-blooded smirk. Caught in the act, the mayor completely loses it. 1 second she's sobbing and begging for mercy, and the next, she's screaming insults like a total lunatic. It was an Oscar-worthy performance of pure desperation. But the very next day, she's back on TV with a fake smile, publicly promising to be a guardian for the nation's children. Realizing his own wife is entangled in this mess, Tae-seob realizes he can't just leak the footage to the press like he originally planned. Instead, he decides to lay his cards on the table with the ultimate puppet master, Young-mi. He offers a trade. He'll bury the scandal forever, but only if she lets his wife go. Young-mi isn't easily intimidated, though. She threatens to make his career as a prosecutor vanish in the blink of an eye. But Tae-seob knows her secrets, so he doesn't flinch. Before he leaves, Young-mi drops a chilling name, Jae-sang, a man who is about to be released from prison. She even reveals that this man has been obsessively sending Sang-ah love letters all this time. After that fateful night, the atmosphere at home is so tense you could cut it with a knife. An exhausted Sang-ah explains that she had to stay up all night cleaning up the mess. Tae-seob tries to play it off, claiming his only target was the mayor, and that he had no idea his wife's agency was even involved. Sang-ah practically begs him to stop his crusade, warning that if he keeps poking the beast that is Young-mi, they will both be dragged into the abyss together. That's when Tae-seob delivers his finishing move. He asks her point-blank if she's hiding anything from him, specifically about this man named Jae-sang. Even though her heart is racing, Sang-ah keeps a stone-cold face and lies through her teeth, swearing that the man hasn't contacted her. Meanwhile, a ruthless online journalist is already prepping an exposé on the couple. The article claims that behind their perfect marriage lies a world of mutual suspicion. The husband doesn't trust the wife, and the wife is sitting on a mountain of explosive secrets. But it gets even darker. Their entire history supposedly started with a cold-blooded murder. And the only person who ever saw the true face behind Sang-a's star mask is now dead and buried. Later that night, Sang-a retreats to the bathroom to secretly burn the letter Jae-sang sent her. At the exact same time, Tae-seob is back at the office, digging through Jae-sang's old case files. The next morning, Tae-seob finds the ashes in the bathroom. He rummages through the trash and recovers a few unburnt scraps of the letter, fragments that mention a plan to expose the truth through hidden audio recordings. Over at the film set, Sang-a is busy filming her new project when a freak accident leaves her with a knee injury. An aspiring actress named Jong-won is quickly brought in as a stand-in for the technical test shots. No one expected this nobody to be so good. Even the veteran film crew is stunned, whispering that her acting is so intense, it's actually overshadowing the lead actress herself. But here's the real kicker. This stand-in is actually a mole Tae-seob secretly planted to spy on his wife. The moment Sang-a lets her guard down, Jong-won pretends to grab the wrong phone and uses the opportunity to quickly hack into Sang-a's device. Meanwhile, Sang-a's assistant is hit with a wave of chills. She notices that this mysterious stand-in has the exact same aura and vibe as a famous actress who died a long time ago. Sang-a eventually slips away to a secluded spot to make a secret call to Jae-sang in prison. Jae-sang reveals that someone else has already contacted him, offering a deal to expose the dark truth Sang-a has been trying to keep buried. They agree on a time and place to meet in person to settle the score once and for all. Simultaneously, Yang-mi sends Tae-seob an article that hits him right in his Achilles heel. It details exactly why he and his wife are so terrified of one another. It turns out their relationship truly did begin with a murder, and that secret is the one thing that could destroy them both. Yang-mi gives him an ultimatum. As long as he's a good boy and plays the role of her personal puppet, the secret stays buried. But if he ever tries to bite back again, she'll drop this bomb and sink their entire world into the depths of hell without a single trace of mercy. If Yang-mi thought she had Tae-seob silenced, she was dead wrong. Just moments later, every news station in the country starts dropping bombshell reports on Mayor Hae-hoon's explosive scandal. Tae-seob didn't just leak a rumor, he provided rock-solid evidence of her illegal dealings, sending shockwaves through the city and throwing the entire political establishment into a state of total panic. Yang-mi watches the news, her face literally turning purple with rage. But before she can even process Tae-seob's audacity, the mayor herself storms into the office. The two women get into a screaming match, trading insults until they eventually lose all composure and get into a full-blown physical brawl. Meanwhile, the media starts sniffing around, asking the billion-dollar question. Why would Tae-seob blow the whistle on a scandal that directly involves his own wife's talent agency? Reporters swarm the film set, cornering Sang-a to get a piece of the drama. Luckily, Jong-won, the spy playing the stunt double, puts on a flawless performance, helping Sang-a slip through the mob and escape. The second she's free, Sang-a races to find Tae-seob. She's absolutely livid, screaming at him for making such a massive move without saying a single word to her, especially since her reputation is now being dragged through the mud in every headline. This is when Tae-seob finally lays all his cards on the table. He tells her he knows all about her secret calls to Jae-sang. He also knows that the powerful madam is holding an old murder case, the death of a man named Kwang Jae, over their heads to blackmail the entire family. He looks her in the eye and tells her the cold truth. Whether he leaked that video or not, Yang-mi was always going to use her as bait to crush him. In his mind, declaring all-out war was the only way to avoid being trampled into the dirt. But Sang-a isn't buying it. She's desperate to reclaim her former glory as an actress and refuses to make an enemy out of a woman as powerful as Yang-mi. She gives Tae-seob a brutal ultimatum. If he doesn't stop this crusade right now, their marriage is over, and they will walk away as enemies. Despite the threat, Tae-seob doesn't blink. He immediately organizes an exclusive press conference for the young actor, Yoon-sung. Under the blinding lights of the cameras, the kid gives the performance of a lifetime. Following Tae-seob's script to the letter, he plays the role of a helpless victim who was forced into servicing VIPs against his will. He tearfully praises Sang-a, calling her a heroic big sister who did everything in her power to protect him from the industry's filth. With the public sympathy secured, the man of the hour, Tae-seob, finally steps into the spotlight. He boldly announces that he exposed the mayor to cut the rot out of the corrupt alliance between politics and show business. But he doesn't stop there. He releases a detailed list of the mayor's secret transactions, exposing how she used fake names to hoard real estate and even bought luxury apartments to keep her toy boy actors. Finally, he takes aim at the top, the prosecutor general. He accuses his own boss of covering up the mayor's crimes because they're family. To win over the hearts of the people, he plays the everyman card, admitting he was terrified his wife would be caught in the crossfire. He tells the world he's just the son of a poor fishmonger, but he's willing to sacrifice everything for the dignity of the law. In an instant, Tae-seob becomes a national idol, a star of justice and a silent hero for the youth. Meanwhile, a petition to remove the mayor from office gathers tens of thousands of signatures in record time. Backed into a corner and losing her mind, Youngmi realizes she can't touch Tae-seob while he's the nation's golden boy. So, she shifts her sights to Sang-ah. She vows to turn his wife into her personal plaything, promising to break her down piece by piece. She wants Tae-seob to have a front row seat as the thing he treasures most is humiliated and destroyed. Shortly after, Tae-seob gets a tip that Jae-sang is set to be released from prison early next Monday. Even more suspicious, a tabloid journalist named Ji-ho has been visiting the inmate constantly. That night, Ji-ho meets with Youngmi to report that Jae-sang has officially agreed to cooperate with their plan. Youngmi even forces him to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement. It's clear she's cooking up a plot far more sinister than anyone can imagine. Meanwhile, Jong-won is still acting as Sang-ah's shadow, reporting her every move to Tae-seob. That's when Sang-ah is spotted secretly getting into a mysterious car for a high-stakes meeting. The person waiting for her in the shadows is finally revealed. It's Se-myung, the chairman of the entire conglomerate, and Youngmi's very own husband. The photos captured by Jong-won hit Tae-seob's phone like a heat-seeking missile, pointing him directly toward the heart of the chaos. While Tae-seob is still processing the images of his wife's secret meeting, he receives an unexpected invitation. A seat at the table for an elite dinner hosted by the conglomerate's crown prince. Sitting among the men who hold the country's economy in their hands, Tae-seob is treated like a VVIP guest of honor. It's clear why. Everyone at this table is secretly on the same team, all plotting to dismantle Youngmi's empire. As the night hits its peak, a high-ranking official walks in to greet Tae-seob with over-the-top enthusiasm. But then, the air in the room suddenly turns to ice. Walking in right behind the official is none other than Youngmi herself. Her presence is like a bucket of cold water dumped on the party. The laughter dies instantly, and everyone's smiles freeze on their faces. While this tense power play is happening, Sang-ah is off on her own, playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the old chairman. She coldly lights a cigarette, looking like a woman with nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Tae-seob is playing the social game perfectly, looking like he's having the time of his life while successfully isolating Youngmi from the inner circle of power. Sensing she's being sidelined, Youngmi's frustration boils over. She signals Tae-seob to step outside for a private chat. Surrounded by a cloud of cigarette smoke, she starts spitting threats. But Tae-seob doesn't flinch. He keeps his composure, silently vowing to drag this woman down into the deepest abyss. When her verbal attacks fail to rattle him, Youngmi gets physical, giving his thigh an aggressive, suggestive pinch while whispering his wife's name. Hearing Sang-ah mentioned sends a flicker of panic through Tae-seob, but he forces himself to stay calm. Youngmi is threatening to dig up a dark legal case from Sang-ah's past to destroy her. Little does she know, Sang-ah is already trying to handle it herself by pleading with the chairman. No matter how much Sang-ah tries to influence the old man, he remains a brick wall of calm. But here's the twist. The entire conversation was being recorded and sent straight to Tae-seob. That night, Tae-seob looks down at his sleeping wife, realizing they are both being haunted by a ghost from 2018. A horrific murder case involving a man named Jae-sang. Back in 2018, the country was rocked by the assassination of Kwang Jae, a legendary movie mogul. Ji-ho, the journalist working with Youngmi, has a theory that is absolutely explosive. He believes Sang-ah was the one who actually hired Jae-sang to carry out the hit. So what was her connection to the victim? Kwang Jae was the man who discovered Sang-ah and built her into the superstar she became. After Kwang Jae's empire grew, he was brutally murdered, and Jae-sang was arrested as the prime suspect. At the time, the public was stunned because Jae-sang was known to be a timid, spineless man, the last person anyone expected to be a cold-blooded killer. However, the news was buried almost as quickly as it broke. Suspecting a massive cover-up, Ji-ho personally visits Jae-sang in prison to find the truth. Behind bars, the inmate finally cracks, admitting he was nothing more than a puppet. He promises to reveal the real truth the moment he's released. But Ji-ho isn't as sneaky as he thinks. Jong-won and her team are right on his tail, tracking his every move. Meanwhile, back at her office, the pressure is clearly getting to Youngmi. She's seen manically practicing dance moves and screaming at the top of her lungs just to keep from snapping under the stress. When Ji-ho returns to Youngmi to report that Jae-sang is officially out of prison, she isn't impressed. She tears into him, calling his investigative videos boring enough to put a baby to sleep. To light a fire under his feet, Youngmi offers him a small gift, a bribe to keep him hungry. Even though she doesn't trust him as far as she can throw him, she's counting on Ji-ho's big mouth to do the dirty work for her. Little do they know, Jong-won is outside listening to every single word. She signals her team to hack into the computer system in Ji-ho's car. To buy them more time, Jong-won puts her acting skills to use. She accidentally trips while carrying a water bottle, soaking Ji-ho from head to toe. The moment she gets the signal that the hack is complete, she drops the act, reveals her true identity, and gives Ji-ho a cold, mocking smile that leaves him seeing red. He's furious, but there's absolutely nothing he can do. Task complete. She reports back to Tae-seob and stays on the target's tail. Meanwhile, Tae-seob is deep in thought about his wife when he gets a formal summons. The corrupt elite are ready to strike back. They want to suspend him immediately to kill the momentum of his recent scandal busting. But Tae-seob isn't the type to wait for a death sentence. He kicks the door open and marches into the hearing, looking the corrupt officials right in the eye. In an ultimate power move, he slams his resignation letter onto his old boss's desk. A literal slap in the face to the entire establishment. His boss tries to chase him down to stop him, but Tae-seob is already gone. Outside, the media is in a total frenzy. Before the reporters can even surround him, Tae-seob tosses his official ID badge into the trash. Standing in front of a sea of cameras, he drops a bombshell. "I'm here to make a fresh start. I am officially running for a seat in the National Assembly." Without another word, he walks away, leaving the press in a state of shock. On the other side of town, Sang-ah is having a much worse day. Reporters are hounding her everywhere, and her brand deals are vanishing into thin air. She's being forced to pay massive contract termination fees, and her only hope is to hold onto a single film role. Suddenly, she gets a call from Jae-sang. The way she speaks to him, dripping with sweetness, is a side of her that even her husband has never seen. But the call isn't just a friendly chat. Jae-sang is here to collect. He reminds her of the dark promise they made years ago. He would take the fall for the murder, go to prison, and when he got out, she would divorce Tae-seob and be with him. Every single word is being intercepted by Tae-seob and Jong-won. As Jae-sang gets more agitated and demanding, Tae-seob realizes he needs to solidify his public image fast. He goes on a major news network for a live interview, playing the humble servant of the people, thanking everyone for their support. That night, Jong-won tracks Ji-ho to a local restaurant. She slips inside, sitting directly behind him. Jae-sang is there too, looking conflicted. He's worried that revealing the truth will destroy Sang-ah, the woman he still considers his first love. But Ji-ho is a master manipulator. He plays on Jae-sang's insecurities and manages to shake his faith in her. It works. Jae-sang hands over an old, secret recording. Ji-ho immediately starts copying the files to his laptop, thinking he's hit the jackpot. Jong-won listens in as the recording plays. It's Sang-ah's voice, making those incriminating promises from years ago. Just as Ji-ho is celebrating his victory, Tae-seob appears out of nowhere like a ghost. In a fit of rage, he snatches the recording and smashes Ji-ho's laptop into pieces, before turning his fury on Jae-sang. During the chaos, Jong-won swiped the smashed laptop and disappeared. Tae-seob then drags his romantic rival, Jae-sang, into the restroom. His blood is boiling. He pins the man down and delivers a chilling warning. "If you utter one more word, I will make sure you're framed for murder all over again. I used to be a prosecutor. I know exactly how to make you rot in a cell for the rest of your life." Tae-seob walks out calmly, leaving a broken man behind. Meanwhile, Jong-won has already made it back to the safe house. She cracks open the mangled laptop and successfully retrieves the hard drive, giving Tae-seob the ultimate leverage. The files retrieved from the hard drive contain everything: the evidence, the testimonies, and a face that Jong-won recognizes instantly: an actress named Ji-soo. She turns out to be the absolute smoking gun in this century-defining case. We flash back to a past production where Ji-soo is filming an intense sex scene. The psychological trauma is so overwhelming that she has to beg for a break before running off to be violently sick. Moments later, the predatory director, Kwang Jae, storms in. He doesn't care that she's terrified or on the phone. He kicks the door down like a maniac. Ji-soo confronts him, asking why there's a sex scene she never agreed to and explaining she's on medication just to keep from having a breakdown. But the director doesn't have a shred of empathy. To him, it's simple: "I paid you, so you film it." His eyes turn cold and predatory as he drags her back out, forcing her to perform. That's when Sang-ah enters the picture. She arrives on set and secretly has someone film the entire abusive confrontation. Sang-ah is the only one brave enough to challenge the most powerful man in the industry, even offering to pay Ji-soo's massive contract penalty fees herself. Back at home, Sang-ah shuts out the world, refusing to answer any calls. She offers Ji-soo a place to hide, and though Ji-soo appreciates the gesture, she is paralyzed with fear of the director's reach. To comfort her, Sang-ah takes her hand, and they share a moment of raw, heartbreaking vulnerability. Despite the trauma, Ji-soo's hunger for fame eventually wins out, and she decides to go back to the film. The two women collapse into each other's arms, sobbing. But this wasn't just a close friendship. It's revealed that the two women were actually in love. Jae-sang recounts that back then, Kwang-jae was a god. No one dared to cross him. But slowly, Sang-ah began to lose her grip on reality. After Jisoo's eventual death, Sang-ah's acting career died with her. Everything traces back to one fateful, horrific night. Jisoo had gone to the director's mansion, thinking it was for a special shoot. But the moment she stepped inside, the vibe shifted. There were no cameras, no crew, just a room dominated by a single, eerie pink bed. The director dragged her inside, where two vultures of the elite were waiting, the prosecutor general and the chairman of the WR group. No matter how hard she tried to run, she was trapped. Within 2 minutes, Jisoo was stripped of her humanity and treated like a piece of high-end merchandise, nothing more than a toy for the rich and powerful. Meanwhile, Sang-ah was closing in on the location. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, observing the surroundings. Reaching the room, she pulled out a key and slipped inside. With a knife gripped firmly in her hand, she found Kwang-jae asleep. In that moment, the actress became an assassin. She lunged, stabbing at him with everything she had, but her first few strikes missed as a struggle broke out. Kwang-jae woke up and fought back, throwing her to the ground. But Sang-ah managed to recover and plunged the blade into the monstrous director, killing him on the spot. But then, a knock came at the door. We jump back 9 years. This was the era when Tae-seob was still a nobody, a rookie just starting to dip his toes into the world of power. At the time, he was nothing more than a glorified chauffeur for the prosecutor general. After driving his boss to a secluded, luxury villa, Tae-seob noticed another high-end car parked in the shadows. He saw a man step out, accompanied by Jisoo. Under the watchful eyes of bodyguards, they were led down into a deep basement. Inside that heavy door, the twisted director Kwang-jae was already waiting with a sickening smirk. Jisoo was trembling with anxiety, still clinging to the hope that this was just a special filming session. But once she saw the darkness of the room and realized she was being presented as a gift to the prosecutor general and the WR chairman, it was too late. She tried to flee, but there was no escape. At that exact moment, outside the villa, Tae-seob's phone rang. It was his boss, the prosecutor general, calling with a simple, mundane request: bring a pack of cigarettes inside. The moment Tae-seob pushed that door open, he witnessed a nightmare. Jisoo was being violently dragged back into the room. Driven by his gut instinct to do the right thing, Tae-seob tried to step in and play the hero, hoping to save her. But he was just one man against a wall of corruption. Jisoo was ripped away from him and pulled back into that living hell. A short while later, Tae-seob had to return to that same room to deliver a pack of cigarettes to the prosecutor general. This time, he saw the full, sickening reality of what was happening. Director Kwang-jae didn't even hide it. He just looked at Tae-seob and threw out a cold, mocking comment, reminding the young prosecutor exactly where he stood in the food chain. Feeling utterly powerless and sick to his stomach, Tae-seob walked away, but he couldn't help stealing one last look at that hell on earth, knowing he had just witnessed a soul being destroyed. The aftermath was even worse. News broke that Jisoo had died, consumed by resentment and despair. The report hit Sang-ah like a bolt of lightning, leaving her completely hollowed out. The star who used to live for the spotlight was now drowning in a pain too heavy to carry. When she tried to step outside, she was instantly swarmed by a mob of paparazzi. The flashing lights and the weight of her grief were too much. Sang-ah collapsed and fainted right there in the middle of the chaos. When she finally woke up within the lonely walls of her room, the silence was deafening. She could only sob in total hopelessness, scrolling through her old, hopeful text messages with Jisoo. Their love was a beautiful, secret thing that had now become a festering wound in Sang-ah's heart, one that would never truly heal. Just as she was sinking into the darkest depths of depression, there was a knock at the door. It was Jae-sang. It turns out the old fox Kwang-jae was even more devious than she thought. He had ordered Jae-sang to become Sang-ah's personal bodyguard. In reality, this was a high-level surveillance tactic to make sure she never breathed a word of the truth to anyone. Despite Sang-ah's fierce resistance, Jae-sang ignored her and practically forced her to attend Jisoo's funeral. The moment she stepped into the funeral hall, her eyes met Tae-seob's. In that brief glance, there was a world of unspoken sympathy and a shared, lingering guilt. Then the villain himself appeared. Director Kwang-jae had the audacity to play the grieving victim, putting on a pathetic show of innocence for the crowd. But when he sat down at the same table as Sang-ah, she snapped. She couldn't hold the rage in anymore and screamed right in his face. "You're the one who killed her." The raw pain in her voice sent a flicker of panic through Kwang-jae. Sang-ah lost all control, lunging forward and smashing everything in sight to vent her fury. Luckily, Tae-seob was there to pull her back before she did something that would land her in handcuffs. Before she left, Sang-ah delivered a stinging, thunderous slap across Kwang Jae's face. Watching her walk away with trembling steps, Tae-seob knew he couldn't let this go. That night, he stayed up researching every elite monster who had been in that basement. He discovered the terrifying truth. The director and the chairman of the WR group weren't just business partners. They were sworn brothers. Back at her house, Sang-ah was spiraling. The grief was literally making her sick, and she began a path of self-destruction, refusing to eat and locking herself in a dark room. But Kwang Jae wasn't done playing with his prey. He had hidden cameras installed all over her house to watch her every move. When Sang-ah discovered the disgusting invasion of privacy, she went on a rampage, tearing the house apart and smashing the cameras in a blind rage. She immediately tried to call the police, her hands shaking as she dialed. But instead of a dispatcher, she heard Kwang Jae's voice on the other end, laughing in triumph. He had intercepted the line. He then dropped a final, crushing bombshell. He had been secretly drugging her with marijuana, poisoning her mind to keep her under his thumb. That high was a leash and he owned it. Seeing Jae-sang still standing guard outside like a silent jailer, Sang-ah finally reached her breaking point. The next night, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just took a razor-sharp knife and went straight to Kwang Jae's private suite. In a frenzy of vengeance, she stabbed him repeatedly, watching as the man who destroyed her life bled out on the floor. But just as she was standing over his body, panicked and covered in blood, there was a sudden, heavy knock at the door. Just when you think you've witnessed the gruesome climax, the camera pulls back, and we realize that the murder we just saw was actually a scene from the movie Sang-ah is filming. It was all in her head. But don't get comfortable, because the real truth, as revealed by Jae-sang, is actually much more sinister. It turns out that on that fateful night years ago, it wasn't the fragile Sang-ah who plunged the knife into director Kwang Jae. The real killer was Jae-sang. He was a total simp for her beauty, completely blinded by her manipulation. He carried out the slaughter because Sang-ah had cast a spell on him, convincing him that the director had to die. Before Kwang Jae took his final breath, he managed to grab the killer's leg in a desperate, final struggle. Moments later, the door was kicked open, marking the end of a criminal empire. Cut to a few days later, and Tae-seob is on the scene, leading the murder investigation. Every single piece of evidence points directly at Jae-sang. He's hauled into an interrogation room immediately. But no matter what psychological tactics or brutal pressure Tae-seob uses, Jae-sang stays stone cold and refuses to talk. When the investigation shifts to Sang-ah, Tae-seob loses his patience. He demands to know why she was so deeply entangled with a monster like director Kwang Jae. Jae-sang, meanwhile, is losing his mind in his cell, screaming that Sang-ah was the puppet master behind the whole thing. In her own interrogation, Sang-ah doesn't even bother to deny it. Every look she gives Tae-seob, every cryptic word she speaks, is a silent admission of guilt. But Tae-seob hits a wall. He can't actually convict her. There's no hard evidence. To make matters worse, Jae-sang would rather die than admit he took a bribe or any favor from Sang-ah. For a man like Tae-seob, who treats the truth like a religion, this deadlock is a slap in the face. He's absolutely livid. We then flash back to the moment Sang-ah played her MasterCard. She was at her lowest point, pretending to take her own life with a bottle of pills. Jae-sang just happened to show up and rescue his goddess. He watched her sob, her heart supposedly shattered, and it broke him. He had to listen to her moan about how she wished she had died so she could finally be with Jisoo in the afterlife. Seeing his opening, Jae-sang's blind obsession took over. He fell right into her trap. Sang-ah looked him in the eye and whispered her dark desire. If only that director would vanish from this world, everything would be perfect. Then, she dropped the ultimate bait. If you make that happen, I'll be your woman forever. What Jae-sang didn't know was that every single word of that conversation was being picked up by a hidden voice recorder. But because he was so drunk on love, he hid the recording to protect her. The only reason things are falling apart now is because Jae-sang realized the woman he sacrificed his life for didn't wait for him. She went out and married Tae-seob. Fast forward to the present. Tae-seob hears that incriminating recording being leaked during a live stream, and he loses his absolute mind. He races home, drives like a maniac, and kicks the bathroom door right off its hinges. Sang-ah is just stepping out of the shower, her body still covered in steam. In the middle of the hazy, misty room, Tae-seob erupts. He's screaming at her, his voice raw with betrayal. I heard it. I heard everything on that tape. How could you be so cold-blooded? Sang-ah, backed into a corner like a wounded animal, finally snaps. She screams back at the top of her lungs. If I didn't do it, Jisoo would never have been able to rest in peace. But here's the kicker. Tae-seob is a pro. He's been sharp from day one. He reveals that he had already suspected the truth long ago. He's been quietly digging into the underground syndicates and the web of corruption surrounding this case for years. As Tae-seob digs deeper into the shadows, one name keeps rising to the surface. Lim. He's the cold-blooded cleaner and professional hitman for the WR group. One night, using the intel he's gathered, Taeseob tracks Lim down to his house. Playing the part of a professional thief, he breaks in and ransacks the place looking for a smoking gun. He hits the jackpot when he finds a secret box stashed away, filled with stacks of cash and a private ledger. This book is a literal map of every dirty deal the conglomerate has ever made. Taeseob quickly snaps photos of every page and carefully lifts a set of fingerprints using his forensic kit. When the results come back, it's a total slap in the face to justice. The all-powerful WR group has been pulling the strings the entire time. The next morning, Taeseob is hauled into the chief prosecutor's office for a reality check. The chief is thrilled to see Taeseob acting like a mindless puppet, completely stoic and submissive, as if he saw absolutely nothing the night before. Satisfied that he's tamed his rising star, the chief tosses Taeseob a major news tip as a reward for his loyalty. But inside, Taeseob is at war with himself. You see, he's the only one who knows the real truth about what happened that night. The director, Kwang Jae, wasn't actually killed by Jae Sang like everyone thinks. After Jae Sang stabbed him and jumped out the window to escape, the director was still clinging to life. The person who actually finished the job? It was Lim. He showed up to tie up loose ends and eliminate the problem for good. But because Taeseob was obsessed with reaching the top, he made a deal with the devil. He chose the most ruthless path possible. He faked the forensic files and manipulated the evidence to frame Jae Sang and steer the media exactly where he wanted them. Flashback to the night Taeseob proposed to Sang-ah. Even before they were officially a couple, Taeseob approached her with an offer she couldn't refuse. He saw a survival instinct in her that matched his own, the drive of someone who would do anything to climb out of the gutter. Instead of a diamond ring or a bouquet of roses, Taeseob's wedding gift was a file of murder evidence. He knew he was just a pawn for the elite, a hunting dog for the rich. But he realized that with an ambitious woman like Sang-ah by his side, he could become the king. He promised to protect her no matter what, but his actual proposal was the stuff of nightmares. Be my accomplice. To make it work, Taeseob buried the truth deep in the ground. He turned Jae Sang into a sacrificial lamb, forcing him into a corner. Jae Sang, terrified that the elite would hurt his mother, eventually walked into court and confessed to a murder he didn't finish. But for Taeseob and Sang-ah, life was anything but peaceful. Sang-ah eventually realizes that Taeseob's cold-blooded ambition has destroyed everyone in their path. She never imagined that Jae Sang would be framed so cruelly. Looking at the man she married, now a stranger with a heart of ice, she is filled with a mixture of terror and self-loathing. After a massive blowout where they scream the most hateful, soul-crushing things at each other, Sang-ah can't take it anymore. She grabs her bathrobe and flees the apartment in the middle of the night, her mind completely shattered. She has no idea that even now, mysterious eyes are watching her from the shadows. Driven by pure panic and a desire to just end the pain, Sang-ah gets in her car and drives like a maniac, weaving through traffic as if she's looking for a way out of this life. She slams on the brakes just inches away from a fatal accident. She steps out of the car, barefoot and trembling on the cold pavement. Everywhere she looks, she sees the truth catching up to her. Neon signs and billboards seem to change before her eyes, screaming one word: murderer. Just as she's about to give up and let the darkness take her, a hand suddenly reaches out from behind and grabs her. While the world falls apart, Yangmi is having the time of her life. She's seen dancing around her office with a glass of red wine, eyes glued to the news reports covering the scandal surrounding Taeseob and Sang-ah. To her, the anchor's voice detailing their downfall isn't just news. It's a beautiful symphony, and she's enjoying every single note of their misery. Meanwhile, Jong-won is sitting in the shadows, listening intently to the secret recordings she took of the couple's explosive fight. The sheer level of despair in Sang-ah's voice is so raw it actually makes the stoic Jong-won freeze in place. The eavesdropping session only ends when Sang-ah finally stumbles out of the house, looking like a hollowed-out ghost of her former self. She struggles just to get into her car, her mind a complete wreck as she pulls away. As she drives, Sang-ah is so out of it that she nearly plows into a traffic cop. Realizing she's a danger to everyone on the road, she manages to pull over and staggers out of the vehicle. But her mind is slipping. She looks up and sees a massive, glittering billboard of herself on a 100-story skyscraper, the nation's goddess staring down at the broken woman on the sidewalk. Passers-by start to recognize her, whispering and staring, but Sang-ah doesn't even care about her image anymore. She's hit rock bottom. Suddenly, a warm coat is draped over her shoulders, snapping her back to reality. She turns around to find Jong-won, who has been shadowing her this entire time. As they stand face to face, the sight of Sang-ah's broken spirit triggers a traumatic memory for Jong-won, taking her back to her own childhood. In the flashback, we see young Jong-won's life was a living nightmare. Her father was a violent alcoholic who constantly beat her mother. Jong-won would throw herself in the way, taking the blows from her demon father just to protect her mom. But one night, the abuse became too much to bear. Jong-won's mother, unable to endure another second of the pain, took her own life. The loss of the only person she loved broke something inside Jong-won. Even when her father continued to beat her, she didn't shed a single tear. Her heart had turned to stone. Driven by a cold, murderous rage, young Jong-won tracked her father down to a gambling den. Without a second of hesitation, she walked up and plunged a knife into his side. Not once, but twice. People tried to pull her off, but in her state of pure insanity, she kept stabbing him until he was dead. She was eventually caught and sent to a juvenile detention center, which is where her destiny first crossed paths with Tae-seob. Back then, Tae-seob was just starting out, and he felt a strange sense of pity for the girl whose youth was being stolen by prison bars. But Jong-won didn't want pity. With hollow, hopeless eyes, she told him that even if she could go back in time, she'd kill that bastard all over again. Prison didn't rehabilitate her, it corrupted her. The years behind bars ground down what was left of her humanity, and she spiraled into a life of crime. She went from small-time hustles to becoming a high-end thief, targeting the ultra-wealthy with surgical precision and selling what she stole to the underworld just to pay off her debts. It was a never-ending cycle of survival. Years later, Tae-seob found her again, looking ragged and beaten down by life. Before he could even say a word, Jong-won accidentally dropped something in front of him. Panicked and desperate to hide her shame, she turned and ran as fast as she could. She thought she had lost him, but Tae-seob was like a shadow. He followed her until he eventually caught up. That night, he didn't take her to a police station. Instead, he dragged an exhausted Jong-won back to his own home. When they walked through the door, his sister nearly jumped out of her skin, horrified by the pathetic, bloodied state of the stranger her brother had just brought home. Seeing Jong-won's disheveled and pathetic state, even Tae-seob's sister can't help but feel a wave of pity. Despite the attempts to comfort her or strike up a conversation, Jong-won remains stubbornly silent, her body trembling with a coldness that won't go away. Seeing this, Tae-seob pours her a glass of wine to steady her nerves. He opens up, admitting that the only reason he fought for her reduced sentence years ago was because he wanted to apologize to her on behalf of her father, and he truly hoped she would live a decent life after prison. But seeing her like this, back in the gutter, makes him feel a deep sense of disappointment. Jong-won finds his speech ridiculous. In her eyes, society has no place for a murderer. She tells him that just surviving in this filthy world is a miracle in itself. Sensing her stubbornness, Tae-seob skillfully pivots the conversation to her dreams. When he discovers her secret desire to become an actress, he makes her an offer. He'll help her reach the stars. This was how Jong-won finally entered Sang-a's orbit. After witnessing the explosive fights between the couple, Jong-won can't stop thinking about this woman. She begins to feel a strange, deep-rooted emotion towards Sang-a. Whenever Sang-a was on the verge of a total breakdown, Jong-won felt like she had to be the solid wall holding her up. As they stare at each other, Jong-won is flooded with memories of her own darkest moments. Back when she was suffering in her personal hell, Sang-a's image, on TV and billboards, was like an angel looking down into the abyss. But now the tables have turned. The angel is the one who is broken, sitting right next to Jong-won, looking completely lifeless. Sang-a demands to know why Jong-won is there at that exact moment. Before she can answer, a barrage of calls and texts from Tae-seob gives the game away. Realizing she's being watched, Sang-a's eyes turn ice cold. To prove her loyalty and regain Sang-a's trust, Jong-won makes a bold move. She takes her phone and hurls it away, cutting off her link to Tae-seob right in front of her. Back at the office, Tae-seob is pacing like a caged tiger because he can't reach his spy. Just then, one of his subordinates sends him a video, a bystander's recording of Sang-a and Jong-won leaving together. As a heavy rain begins to pour, the two women are forced to pull over at a dingy, run-down hotel to wait out the storm. Inside, Jong-won quietly pours Sang-a a drink. Sang-a is surprised by how natural and comfortable the girl seems. Perhaps because of the atmosphere, Sang-a lets her guard down and drops a bombshell. She reveals that she's known all along that Jong-won was the one stalking and eavesdropping on her. Jong-won is stunned for a second, but then she decides to be honest. She confesses that she truly wants Sang-a to be happy. She explains that on the night her mother died, Sang-a's face appearing on the TV was the only thing that soothed her agonizing pain. Sang-a is taken aback, but then asks a biting question. Why would her husband hire a convicted killer to watch her? After a long pause, Jong-won whispers the truth. Because I think you're pitiful. Just as the words leave her lips, they realize Tae-seob has tracked them down to their hiding spot. He doesn't come inside. He just stands there, his presence a silent warning that he knows exactly where they are. After a tense moment, he disappears into the night. Feeling the pressure lift slightly, Jong-won finally heads to bed. But as Sang-ah is drifting off into a deep sleep, Jong-won can't help herself. She reaches out and gently strokes Sang-ah's hair. That soft touch wakes Sang-ah up, but in her dazed, half-asleep state, she hallucinates. She thinks the woman in front of her is Jisoo, the lover she lost years ago. In a daze of grief and longing, Sang-ah whispers an apology and leans in, catching Jong-won off guard with a sudden, desperate kiss. The morning after is a total nightmare for Tae-seob. As if dealing with his wife's disappearing act wasn't enough, a major news outlet drops a bombshell article. He is now officially under investigation for allegedly covering up the Kwang Jae murder case. The tension in the legal world hits a boiling point. With his back against the wall, Tae-seob has no choice but to head straight to the high-level offices to face his superiors and answer for his sins. Tae-seob's attempt to clear his name with the higher-ups goes south fast. His representatives aren't buying his excuses. They tell him he needs to disappear from the public eye until the scandal blows over. But for a man obsessed with the upcoming election, laying low is a death sentence. Tae-seob flatly refuses. He's not backing down now. Realizing his back is against the wall, Tae-seob calls his partner, director Jang Uk, for help. But Jang Uk has decided Tae-seob is now a liability. He tosses his phone to a security guard and tells him to block the call, using the chairman's birthday party as a convenient excuse to go ghost. Tae-seob isn't an easy man to ignore, though. He tracks Jang Uk down and plays his ultimate trump card. If you don't help me right now, I'm digging up every skeleton in your closet and dragging you down with me. Meanwhile, early the next morning, Jong-won goes out to get food for Sang-ah. But when she returns, she spots Sang-ah acting suspicious, talking to a mysterious stranger before rushing off. Jong-won's phone rings. It's an anonymous tip. Someone claims they have a copy of the incriminating recording, and they're using it as bait to lure Sang-ah to a secret meeting. Back in the Viper's Nest, Yang-mi's team is working overtime. Her assistant and the journalist, Ji-ho, are preparing to drop the Sang-ah recording tomorrow under the guise of seeking justice. Yang-mi is practically salivating at the thought of the chaos this will cause. But she has bigger problems at home. Her elderly husband, the chairman, is in failing health, and his messy paperwork is a nightmare. To stay in his good graces, Yang-mi and her daughter throw him a lavish birthday party. The daughter is forced to perform a song to flatter her father, making for an incredibly awkward and cringy atmosphere. Everyone pretends to enjoy it except for the other heir, Jang Il. He sees right through Yang-mi's act. After the party, he mocks her, but Yang-mi bites back, telling him to mind his own business and deal with the Tae-seob problem. That's when the mood shifts. Jang Il asks her point-blank, "Did you leak the Kwang Jae murder case to mess with Tae-seob?" He warns her that her little prank just backfired. If Tae-seob goes down for a cover-up, the investigation will lead right back to their family. If Tae-seob falls, the entire conglomerate implodes. Yang-mi turns pale. She finally realizes she's made a fatal miscalculation. Just then, Tae-seob makes his grand entrance. He doesn't bring a gift. He brings a folder of incriminating documents and hands them directly to the chairman. The old man tries to keep his cool, acting like Tae-seob is just a fly he can swat away. But Tae-seob leans in and whispers the nuclear option. He tells the chairman, "If this goes public, you're finished. And your youngest daughter? She'll spend the rest of her life known as the daughter of a cold-blooded murderer." The pressure is too much. The legendary chairman, a man who once held the world in his hands, collapses under the weight of the threat. He faints on the spot, and in the ultimate moment of humiliation, he loses control of his bladder right there in front of Tae-seob. The task of cleaning up the literal mess falls to Yang-mi. She's left scrubbing the floor, gagging from the smell and the sheer disgust of it all. But her fury is cut short when the chairman wakes up. He doesn't thank her. He grabs her by the hair and delivers a terrifying warning. "Stop everything, now." Defeated and humiliated, Yang-mi has no choice but to obey. She begins the process of destroying every scrap of evidence and canceling the plan to leak the recording. Yang-mi is cornered, but she's a snake that always has a backup plan. She orders her team to go silent for now, but tells them to start prepping Plan B immediately. When her assistant relays the bad news to Jae-sang, that the plan to leak the tape is on hold, he completely loses it. He screams into the phone before blocking the number in a fit of rage. Returning home, Jae-sang finds a sight he never expected. The woman he both loves and hates, Sang-ah, is at his grandmother's house. She's actually helping the old woman sort through piles of scrap metal. Then, Sang-ah does the unthinkable. She drops to her knees and tearfully begs Jae-sang for forgiveness for the mistakes of their past. It's a moment of peak tension. To keep the public off their backs while she plots her next move, Yang-mi is forced to scrub all the negative tabloid articles about the couple. But while she plays nice in public, she secretly gives the green light for her puppet journalist, Ji-ho, to trigger Plan B. However, Ji-ho never gets the chance. Out of the shadows, Jong-won ambushes him and drags him to a secluded spot. She tears through his phone looking for the incriminating evidence, but finds nothing. Realizing this bottom-tier thug won't talk to a nice girl, Jong-won turns dark. She pulls out a canister of gasoline and douses him in it. The second he sees her flicking a lighter, his tough guy act vanishes. He starts singing like a bird, confessing every single detail of the plot. Meanwhile, Sang-ah has managed to get Jae-sang to meet her at a quiet cafe. This was her plan all along, to use her nation's sweetheart charm to get him to show some mercy. She puts on an Oscar-worthy performance, crying tears of guilt that actually start to soften Jae-sang's heart. But then, she makes a fatal mistake. She asks him to delete the recording. In an instant, Jae-sang's eyes clear. He realizes it was all a lie. He realizes she doesn't care about his ruined life. She only cares about her own skin. "You're only doing this for the tape," he growls. Sensing her cover is blown, Sang-ah's face transforms. The victim mask drops, and she becomes a cold, terrifying predator. She stops pleading and starts taunting him. Driven over the edge by her arrogance, Jae-sang snaps. He lunges across the table and begins strangling her right there in the middle of the cafe. It's a brutal, public scene, and bystanders immediately pull out their phones to record the violence. Luckily, Sang-ah's security team bursts in just in time to pull him off. But Jae-sang is armed with a knife, and he manages to slash his way out and vanish before the police arrive. Back at his office, Tae-seob sees the viral video of his wife being strangled. He feels a surge of genuine pain and panic, but he's helpless. Just then, Jong-won calls with a lead. She's tracked down Jae-sang's potential hideout. Before she can hang up, Tae-seob gives her a cold reminder. "Your job is to watch him, not to get close to my wife." Jong-won has finally had enough of his hypocrisy. She drops the act and spits the truth right back at him. "You're a murderer who blames everyone else. You aren't protecting her, you're just using her." The insult hits a nerve. Tae-seob loses his cool and slaps Jong-won across the face to remind her of her place. They part ways in a cloud of pure hatred. But Tae-seob's day gets even weirder. He gets a call from the crazy director, Jang Yu-kae, who is calling to thank him in the most twisted way possible. The director reveals that his father, the chairman, is now officially bedridden and paralyzed. Because of the incident Tae-seob caused, the will has been changed entirely in Jang Yu-kae's favor. Yang Mi has been cut out of the empire. As he talks to Tae-seob, the director is clearly spiraling into madness, manically pouring expensive wine all over the floor. Jang Yu-kae stands over his paralyzed father, staring down at the man who used to rule his world with an iron fist. Memories of a childhood filled with brutal beatings flash through his mind, and he realizes he doesn't care about the company's reputation anymore. He's gone, full psycho. Tae-seob is on the other end of the line, losing his mind as the director starts talking crazy. He screams a final threat, that he needs that seat in Congress to bury the O case for good, but the director just hangs up on him. Tae-seob is so enraged that he smashes his phone into a million pieces. The next morning, the nuclear bomb finally goes off. Headlines everywhere expose Tae-seob for faking evidence in the O case years ago. In an instant, both he and Sang-ah are in total freefall, watching their careers and lives go up in flames. That evening, a weary Tae-seob returns home only to see a viral video teaser from Jae-sang. The message is chillingly simple. 8:30 p.m. tonight. I'm going to live to tell the world everything. Just then, Sang-ah calls him. She's in a daze, huddled in a dark corner of the house. No matter how much Tae-seob begs her to hold on or makes empty promises to fix it, she's checked out. She's convinced that, for the nightmare to end, one of them has to take the fall for everything. Jae-sang's 8:30 livestream is the most anticipated media event in the country. Even the journalist Ji-ho is panicking, calling him to demand why he's going rogue. Jae-sang doesn't give him an answer. He just smashes his phone and screams in pure agony before stumbling toward the camera for his final performance. At the same time, Jong-won and her crew are desperately tracking Jae-sang's signal. She gets a tip and races to a mysterious location, kicking the door open. But when she reaches the bathroom, she doesn't find Jae-sang. Instead, she finds a bottle of pills on the floor and a body in a pool of bright red blood. Sang-ah. She's slit her wrists. Jong-won lunges forward to stop the bleeding, and before Sang-ah loses consciousness, she presses a suicide note into Jong-won's hand. After seeing the woman she loves being rushed into an ambulance, Jong-won turns ice cold and heads back to her car. Her team finally has Jae-sang's exact coordinates. Back at the office, Yang Mi is pacing like a caged animal. The clock is ticking toward 8:30, and her fixers still haven't silenced Jae-sang. Tae-seob gets a notification with Sang-ah's hospital location and floors it, racing through traffic to get to her. There are only 4 minutes left. Millions of people are glued to their screens, waiting for the truth to drop. The live stream starts, but the frame is pitch black. As the image slowly comes into focus, the audience gasps in horror. Jae-sang isn't talking. He's already dead, murdered on live TV before he could say a single word. Tae-seob arrives at the hospital just as the news of the mysterious death breaks. He pushes through a wall of reporters to get inside. In the hallway, he sees the doctors wheeling Sang-ah into emergency surgery. She manages to flutter her eyes open for one last look at her husband before the doors swing shut. A moment later, Tae-seob is alone in the hospital restroom. As the reports of Jae-sang's death echo from a nearby TV, something terrifying happens. Tae-seob doesn't cry. He doesn't look relieved. Instead, he lets out a slow, bone-chilling smile. A cold, mocking smirk for a pawn that was finally removed from the board. While he's standing there, he overhears a young, arrogant reporter trash-talking Sang-ah, calling her a fake and a fraud. The guy has no idea that the star prosecutor is standing right behind him. But Tae-seob doesn't even waste his energy on nobody like that. He just turns around and walks back to the waiting room. Only when the doctor finally steps out to announce that Sang-ah's condition has stabilized does Tae-seob feel the crushing weight lift off his shoulders. Still, his heart is far from at peace, so he decides to stay by her side and pull an all-nighter at the hospital. As he sits there, blurred by exhaustion, a gurney suddenly wheels past him in the hallway. The sight feels like a slow-motion film, dragging him back into his painful past. He remembers the day his own father was rushed into the ER, his life hanging by a thread. As he's lost in the memory of his younger self, his sister suddenly appears to check on him. She loves her brother more than anything and is heartbroken to see the chaotic life he's leading. Being a deeply superstitious woman, she can't stop crying as she warns him about a terrifying fortune-telling she recently heard about his fate. Seeing his messy hair and hollowed-out eyes, her heart aches, but there's nothing she can do. She presses some food and drinks into his hands and quietly heads home. Meanwhile, Youngmi is having a massive headache trying to calculate her next move. She knows that if her father, the chairman, doesn't miraculously recover soon, those juicy company shares will never fall into her hands. The doctors are as silent as statues regarding the old man's condition, and Youngmi finally snaps. In a classic power move, she arrogantly demands that the chairman be moved to her private residence, where she can easily manipulate him and rewrite his will. Before she leaves the hospital, she doesn't miss a chance to drop a petty insult, mockingly praising Sang-ah's masterful acting skills in her recent suicide attempt. And as it turns out, she was right. Back in her room, Sang-ah is sitting up in bed, eyes glued to the news. She knew that without this dramatic fake death stunt, the public would have torn her to pieces by now. Even though she's physically weak and stumbling around while dragging her forestand, she's forcing herself to stay sharp. That's when Tae-seob walks in, his face a mask of cold fury. 1 second, he's asking her with concern why she hasn't eaten. And the very next, he flips the entire dining table over in a blind rage. He roars at her, his voice a mix of anger and pure terror. Why didn't you discuss this dangerous play with me first? Do you have any idea how scared I was? But Sang-ah isn't backing down. She screams right back, telling him that this was her only way to survive the media storm. After a brutal exchange of bitter words, the two of them suddenly stop. They realize they are just two miserable souls trapped in the same cage, fighting the same war. The rage dissolves into desperation, and the couple collapses into each other's arms, embracing as if the fight never happened. The next morning, Tae-seob steps out of the room only to see Youngmi in a frantic hurry, moving the paralyzed chairman out of the hospital. He immediately rushes back to Sang-ah to brainstorm a plan to flip the script. If he wants to keep his dream of running for Congress alive, there is now only one desperate move left on the board. While the world burns, Youngmi is at home, chilling with a face mask and enjoying the high life. She's on the phone with a psychic, obsessing over election predictions, and she's absolutely ecstatic when the spirit world tells her everything is going her way. Feeling like she's already won, she orders her henchman, Ji-ho, to dig up every last piece of filth on her opponents to deliver one final, crushing blow. But before Ji-ho can even make a move, a bombshell news report stops everyone in their tracks. Tae-seob and Sang-ah appear in public, walking hand in hand into a massive press conference. They are surrounded by hundreds of reporters, the room blindingly bright from the constant flash of cameras. At the podium, Sang-ah gives an Oscar-worthy performance as the wounded wife. She stands tall, her voice clear and unwavering, as she swears on her honor that she always respected the late director Oh and is ready to prove her innocence to the world. Watching this victim act play out on TV, Youngmi is back at home, her blood literally boiling with rage. Then, it's Tae-seob's turn to speak. He plays the role of the perfect statesman, gently guiding his wife to the side with the poise of a seasoned politician. He looks the public in the eye and swears he's never hidden a single truth, claiming that the recent scandals are a direct violation of his personal honor and a desperate attack by his enemies. Youngmi checks her phone with trembling hands and realizes the impossible is happening. The tide of public opinion is shifting in their favor. Just as she's about to snap, Zhang Yuke strolls into her office, leading a massive, vicious guard dog on a leash. He drops a few cold, mocking insults just to watch Yangmi squirm in her own defeat before he turns around and walks out, leaving her suffocating in her own anger. Back at the press conference, the tension reaches a fever pitch. Every word out of Taesiob's mouth is a targeted strike against the WR group, and specifically against Yangmi. But Yangmi isn't the type to go down without a fight. She's already prepping her counterattack. Behind the scenes, it's revealed that Taesiob and Sang-ah had secretly watched the security footage from the room where Jae-sang died. They saw something that changed everything. There was a woman in that room. The pressure of this secret, combined with the weight of the media circus, finally becomes too much for Sang-ah. In front of the entire nation, she collapses and faints on stage. But as the world watches the chaos in the hospital, we flash back to the moment of Jae-sang's death. The security cameras captured every chilling detail. The door to Jae-sang's room opens, and a woman steps out with a face as cold as ice. It's Jong-won. Before she disappears into the shadows, she stops. She turns her head and looks directly into the camera lens, her eyes a silent, terrifying challenge to fate itself. She knows exactly what she's done. From this moment on, her hands are stained deep red, and she has officially crossed the point of no return.